Happy Christmas! Or if you're watching this during the summer, happy summer holiday, and thanks for watching my Christmas episode in the middle of summer. Christmas is a great time for choirs. It's the one time of year where everyone's listening to choir music. If you're running a choir, you probably have like a gig like every other day. Well, except in 2020, which is the year it is, where we have no gigs. But in a normal year, you'd be having loads of gigs by now, probably. Today, we're going to look at descants. And if you don't know what a descant is, it's essentially the bit at the end of a song, usually a Christmas song, when sopranos go all the way up to their top A's, and it's really loud and it's really glorious. And descants are really an important part of Christmas music. Now, I realize I'm kind of releasing this episode a bit late for you to put descants into your own arrangements, because you won't really have time to rehearse them with your choirs. But maybe you can get a jump start on next year's Christmas music. So without any further ado, let's have a look at descants. Descants are found all over classical music, though these days you mostly hear them in Christmas choral music. The word descant can be spelled in loads of different ways, and it means something like removed from the melody. In the early days of Western classical art music, it would simply refer to any melodic line that wasn't the cantus firmus, or the fixed melody. For example, in 9th century organum music, the improvised line sung alongside the fixed melody would sometimes be referred to as the descant. It wasn't until the Renaissance that the word came to mean specifically a line of counterpoint generally pitched above a melody, and even then it was a fairly general term, also being used to describe highly pitched instruments. Descants really came into their stride in the early 20th century, since standardized hymn books from this period would often include a written-out descant sung in the last or second to last verse of a hymn. Prior to this, descants would be fairly regional, but these books made specific descant lines for hymns more common. The enduring popularity of the Carols for Choirs book series by David Wilcox, Reginald Jacques, and John Rutter has ensured that we now consider the descant lines of the carols in the books to be an intrinsic part of their performance, at least in the UK. Descants are natural additions to Christmas music, though you should be aware that they are very sort of closely associated with Christmas music these days, so just be a little bit careful about where you use them. A descant is essentially a counter melody, so you can apply a lot of the same guidelines that I suggested in an earlier episode I did on counter melodies, which I'll link to on the screen now. But with that in mind, let's have a look at what makes a descant a descant. 1. Descants typically happen in the last verse or section of the arrangement. Normally, you'll have all other voices in unison octaves, with just sopranos, or everyone who has the range to sing it, doing the descant. It perhaps goes without saying, but the descant should reside in a fairly high range and be clearly audible over the melody. Keep in mind that having the voices in unison octaves is kind of a thing you do in accompanied arrangements rather than a cappella arrangements, as they're kind of intended to be done in a congregational setting where the audience sings along with the singers. But if you're doing an a cappella arrangement, you might want to still have the other voices in harmony so that you suddenly don't just have like two lines. 2. Since a descant is, by design, a counter melody, the best descants have good counterpoint against the melody, and should also sound good on their own. As I mentioned previously, if you'd like specific tips on doing counter melody, I did make a whole episode about this a while ago, so you can check that out if you haven't already. However, I'll just sum up quickly some of the things you've got to think about when you do counterpoint. 1. Make it not happen on the same note as the melody. And in the case of a descant, you want it to be preferably in a higher range. Though you can dip under sometimes, that's fine. 2. You want the note to serve a harmonic function. So that means that your counter melody is following the harmony kind of, or playing against the harmony if you want to create tension. But typically you'd want to make full use of all your voices, and so you want it to serve a harmonic function. 3. you want it to not happen on the same beat as the melody. Now, a lot of descants don't really do this. They just they're monophonic with the melody. But you can, introduce some new rhythms to just make it a bit separate from the melody and give it its own identity. And finally, try to not have it move in parallel fifths with the melody. And I talk about this a lot in the counterpoint melody, the counter melody episode. So just have a look there. It's just, again, general guideline to try and avoid parallel fifths if possible. 3. To create some extra edge in a descant, you can use a few notes outside the scale of the song. This can be risky, but if done correctly, it'll create a very exciting effect. Okay, let's have a look at how we can use some of these tips in our descant. So I could have used an existing melody, but I decided to just write my own one. That's quite, a typical hymn-like melody. This one is in the key of E major, and it doesn't really go outside of that. And it should be in a fairly comfortable key for both male and female singers. Da, 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 da. Da 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 da. Now this is just a melody so far. The first thing I got to do is I got to harmonize it, and I need to decide on stuff like what is the bass line going to be. And then this is more like just normal arranging stuff. The descant builds on all those elements. So the first thing I should do is harmonize it and choose a bass line. Here I've done a very simple harmonization of the melody. You can see all I've done is I've written out my bass line. I've not written out the inner parts because that's not really important. I need to make sure that I have a bass line and a melody, because essentially when you do counterpoint, you want to make sure that you play off both of those. And here you can see I've just harmonized it very simply using choral style harmony if you look at the chord symbols. But this is very bare bones. Again, just preparing for writing the descant on top of this. Da, 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 da. Da 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 da. Before we get started on the descant proper, it's important that you have some lyrics for your piece. So I've written in some very appropriate, nice and heartfelt lyrics. Because ultimately you want your descant to be singable using the words of the song, and so you've got to make sure that it feels natural and playing off the text. So these are the lyrics I chose. Now we're gonna go directly into the first tip, which is, of course, the descant should be above the melody. Now you can do this in a very kind of simple way, which I'll show you now. All I've done here is I've just taken the melody and put it up an octave. Now this is going to be terrible to sing. It's going to be completely ineffective because all you're going to do is you're going to double the melody at the octave, and it's not going to be terribly exciting. It's going to be really hard because it goes up to top C sharp. But in a sense, this is kind of the first step, is you choose to have it in a higher range. But of course, this would never run. So we have to do something a bit more interesting with this, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So I've taken on the first two steps here. We have now more of a proper descant, which is on harmony notes, and I've tried to avoid having it on both the melody of the melody of the melody and the melody of the bass line. So you see, I'm just kind of filling out the harmony, and then because I've already decided what the harmony is going to be, I can just look at this and be like, right, well, B sus4, I have a B and I have an F sharp. Okay, well, I need to have an E because that's an important note in the chord which isn't covered. And it's kind of, that sounds very mathematical, but in a sense, that kind of is, counterpoint is a bit mathematical. So doing this, you will have a perfectly serviceable descant. This one isn't particularly interesting because it tends to kind of linger around E here. It doesn't really have any, interesting extra notes, this is something we can get onto later. But to start, this gets you a long way. Just make sure that it's complementing the harmony. And that then already you've given it its own identity. You'll notice that it's also above the melody the whole time.
Have a happy winter holiday in the snowy north and the sunny south, for this song is non-denominational. It appeals to all, fa la 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 la.
Taking this one step further, I've changed the rhythm of the descant just a little bit, not much. With good counterpoint, you don't just have to think about the notes you're using, but also the rhythms you're using. And in this case, I kind of give it a bit more of its own identity by having it start on a different beat. And again, I'm not really doing anything terribly controversial here, just kind of delaying the start a bit. The end, I've just kind of kept it monophonic, but it's fine because you're kind of reaching the end of the song and you might want to have a huge slowing down of the tempo, and then it's a lot easier to get that in time if they're all singing the same rhythm. But again, this is going to help give that descant its own identity.
Have a happy winter holiday in the snowy north and the sunny south, for this song is non-denominational. It appeals to all, fa la 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 la.
Now this descant should work well, but it is very kind of safe. It's all in the key of E major. It doesn't really have anything, to make you excited. And so there's stuff we can do to this to make it a little bit more, exciting and weird, which we'll look at next. I think the best way to talk about using foreign notes in descants is to look at a couple of examples. So I've got here O Little Town of Bethlehem. This is the UK version. I know that in America they use a different tune, but this is the one that is most commonly used in the UK. And this descant was arranged by someone named Thomas Armstrong. Now, you'll see that it sticks within the key of F major. This is only the last half of the melody, by the way, until kind of the third to last bar, when there's a sneaky little minor third on this C chord here. Now, all this does really is it just makes things sound a little bit different. It takes things in a slightly different direction. It's all been very like F major, F major, F major. So this creates just a little bit of interest without being like terribly controversial. I think if you have a song like this in F major and you flatten the seventh step, this implies the Mixolydian mode, which is a very typical like folk music kind of mode. So that might be a thing to do if you wanted to sound a bit more like old and grand and, like folk music. But yeah, this is one example where they change one of the notes to a foreign note. The second one I want to look at is Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And this one has a descant by David Wilcox. And it's quite famous for being very crunchy. So this is, again, very late in the arrangement. It's just the kind of the final repetition of Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And you'll see here the top line, they start together in unison, and then the soprano, the descant, goes up a semitone to create this like minor second or even like minor ninth clash with the melody. And this is also a foreign note to the key. It's kind of similar-ish to the previous one where you're going to the flattened seventh step, but here it's clashing very, very clearly with the melody. But what happens here is that it sounds very exciting. It does get your hairs to kind of stand up. I'm not sure exactly how you say it in English, but essentially, yeah, it gives you a bit of a chill. And especially if you're singing, like I was singing next to very like strong trumpety almost sopranos, and I was like coming up to this bar, I was like getting anxious because I knew that in a second we would be in minor ninths, and it like feels very, very crunchy. But it does create kind of the desired effect of being like quite strong and weird and dissonant just for a little bit, and then it goes back to the key eventually. But yeah, this is a very interesting descant in that way. So yeah, using semitone clash to just get people excited. The last one I want to mention is O Come All You Faithful, and this was again arranged by David Wilcox. And this is a pretty good descant. It has a lot of interesting stuff happening. You can even see it in the bit that I wanted to focus on, which is glow, and it just has this like nice line against the melody. And what David Wilcox does here, and which you might consider doing in your arrangements, is he actually reharmonizes what's happening so that it sounds like it's about to go to a minor key, and then the foreign note then kind of comes from that modulation. So don't forget that you can always reharmonize throughout your arrangements to make them more interesting and create something new. And I think especially O Come All You Faithful does this very successfully. And if you haven't heard this this carol, which would be surprising if you're interested in choirs, but if you haven't, then check it out because it's a really, really good example of descant writing. Finally, while you could technically put a descant into any type of music, it's become so closely associated with Christmas music that using one will create very strong festive associations. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, just keep it in mind. Thank you very much for watching. We'll finish off the video by listening to the full carol with the descant, but I just want to say thank you for your support over the last year. As usual, make sure you share this video with your friends if you think they'll find it useful, and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a happy Christmas, happy New Year, and enjoy the performance of the carol with the descant.
This song is in the public domain, is free to use in your video. What a festive sound, and it feels so nice to listen to, and it's free, you know.